retired Zamir Akram's book titled The Security Imperative, Pakistan's Nuclear Deterrence and Diplomacy. Ladies and gentlemen, this book launch is organized by the Center for International Strategic Studies Sindh in collaboration with Global and Regional Studies Center of the Institute of Business Management. We shall now begin today's program with the recitation of a few verses from the Holy Quran.
अल्लाह के नाम से शुरू जो निहायत मेहरबान हमेशा रहम फरमाने वाला है। बेशक हमने आपको हर खैर व फजीलत में बे इंतहा कसरत बख्शी है। बस आप अपने रब के लिए नमाज पढ़ा करें और कुर्बानी दिया करें, ये हदियाए तशक्कुर है। बेशक आपका दुश्मन ही बेनस्ल और बेनामो निशां होगा।
Ladies and gentlemen, before we proceed further, I would like to mention that this is an open house activity that will be reported in media. This session is also being live streamed on CISSS social media platforms. Without further delay, let me now invite Executive Director, Center for International Strategic Studies Sindh, Ambassador Retired Qazi M. Khalilullah to deliver his opening remarks and also chair the session. Ambassador Qazi holds a master's degree in International Public Policy from the School of Advanced International Studies, Johns Hopkins University, USA. He joined Foreign Service of Pakistan in 1985 and served at the Foreign Office headquarters on various posts including Director, Director General and Additional Secretary. Ambassador Qazi held various diplomatic assignments in Pakistan missions abroad including Russia, Ukraine, Turkmenistan, Switzerland, Myanmar and Cuba. He was Ambassador of Pakistan to Myanmar from 2008 to 2012, Ambassador to Cuba from 2012 to 2014, and Ambassador to the Russian Federation from 2016 to 2019. Ambassador Qazi was spokesperson of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs from May 2015 to February 2016. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Raj. President of IoBM, Mr. Talib Syed Karim, Ambassador Zamir Akram, Dr. Huma Baqai, Rector Syed, Mr. Ikram Sehgal, Chairman Pathfinder Group, Ambassador GR Baluch, dear guests, students, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum. It is a matter of honor for the Center for International Strategic Studies Sindh, which I represent as Executive Director, to organize this book launch ceremony in collaboration with Global and Regional Studies Center of IoBM. At a personal level, I am delighted to chair the event for introducing Ambassador Zamir Akram's book titled The Security Imperative, Pakistan's Nuclear Deterrence and Diplomacy. Ambassador Zamir Akram is my senior diplomatic colleague, whom I hold in high esteem. He served the nation for 38 years as a distinguished member of the Foreign Service of Pakistan. His book is a testament to his worthy contributions, experience, and expertise he acquired while serving at important assignments in Pakistan and in key diplomatic missions abroad, notably Moscow, Washington, and the United Nations. The book is an invaluable source of information on the innumerable security threats and challenges that Pakistan has faced since its birth and how we have dealt with them. The book also succinctly captures the arduous journey of Pakistan's nuclear program and its two dimensions. First is the peaceful uses for socio-economic development of Pakistan with Chinese collaboration. China is the only country in the world which cooperates with Pakistan in generation of nuclear energy. Today, Pakistan Atomic Energy Commission is operating 6 nuclear power plants which collectively produce over 3,500 megawatt of electricity. The 7th nuclear power plant with 1,200 megawatt capacity is under construction. The second dimension is nuclear weapons related dimension, which has guaranteed our national security by neutralizing India's conventional superiority. The book has drawn accolades from many well-known personalities and scholars from Pakistan and abroad. These include former Chairman, Joint Chiefs of Staff Committee, General Zubair Mahmood Hayat, former Senator, Mr. Javed Jabbar, Dr. Huma Baqai, who is with us today, former Foreign Secretary, Mr. Shamshad Ahmed, and former Foreign Secretary Riaz Khokar. Dr. Int'l, author of Pakistan, A Hard Country, and Dr. Anton Lewis, Research Fellow at the International Institute for Studies in UK. The foreword, penned by Lieutenant General Khalid Ahmed Kidwai, retired, who served as Director General of Strategic Plans Division for 15 years, is a masterpiece. In a few pages, he has defined everything that one needs to know about the rationale and development of Pakistan's nuclear program and achievement of full spectrum deterrence that has made Pakistan's defense impregnable. As we read Ambassador Zamir Akram's book, we get a sense of the enormity of security challenges and existential threats Pakistan has faced since 1947. These have mainly come from India. However, no less significant are the ones that relate to Pakistan's strategic location. Let me try to list some of the challenges that have been mentioned by Ambassador Zamir Akram in his book. These include, number one, Kashmir dispute, Indian aggression against Pakistan, wars between the two countries, India's role in dismemberment of Pakistan, India's nuclear program, India's war doctrines, particularly Cold Start Doctrine, and so-called surgical strikes against Pakistan, and India's big power ambitions. Number two, Soviet invasion of Afghanistan. Number three, sanctions on Pakistan's nuclear program after withdrawal of Soviet Union from Afghanistan. Number four, presence of foreign forces in Afghanistan for 2 decades in the aftermath of 9/11, Afghanistan's hostility towards Pakistan during that period, and use of Indian diplomatic missions in Afghanistan for fomenting terrorism in Pakistan while the foreign forces were there. And finally, impact of Indo-US strategic partnership on strategic stability in South Asia. At the same time, however, the reader also gets a sense of Pakistan's remarkable resilience, ability to fight back, indigenization efforts, and use of diplomacy as first line of defense in the service of the nation. These capabilities were very ably demonstrated when Pakistan sought security alliance with the US, joined SEATO and CENTO, established a strategic relationship with China, compelled Soviet Union to exit from Afghanistan in collaboration with the US, its allies and important Muslim countries, successfully developed nuclear weapons program, acted as frontline state in the war on terror, and turned the tide against terrorism in Pakistan at an enormous human and economic cost. As Ambassador Zamir Akram's book is largely based on his personal experience of 38 years in Foreign Service of Pakistan, let me avail this opportunity to share my personal experience relating to some aspects of our nuclear program that have been mentioned in the book. Ambassador Zamir Akram has rightly mentioned that the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan provided space for development of Pakistan's nuclear program. This is true. During my master's degree program at the Johns Hopkins University, USA, I did a course on US national security with former US President Carter's national security advisor, late Zbigniew Brzezinski. The moment he saw me in the class, he recalled that when President Carter asked him in 1979 to go to Pakistan to seek Islamabad's support against Soviet invasion of Afghanistan, the first thing he told him was that the US will have to close its eyes to Pakistan's nuclear program. Our nuclear program, however, was subjected to sanctions after Soviet withdrawal from Afghanistan. Let me highlight a characteristic of the US foreign policy here, which we must understand. The US can go to any extent to help a country when it needs it to serve its national interests. It can go to any extent to harm it or destroy it if needed when the job is done. This is what Pakistan has experienced repeatedly in its long history of relationship with the US. Pakistan's nuclear program has come under immense pressure from the US since its inception. From time to time, Washington has demanded that Islamabad either roll back or cap certain aspects of its nuclear program. However, Pakistan has never compromised on its nuclear program. Let me recall here that in October 2015, on the eve of the then Prime Minister of Pakistan's official visit to Washington, an article appeared in the New York Times insinuating that the Obama administration is exploring a deal with Pakistan that would limit the scope of Pakistan's nuclear arsenal. The talks were being held in Islamabad in advance of the arrival of Prime Minister in Washington. They are focusing on American concerns that Pakistan might be on the verge of deploying small tactical nuclear weapons. The discussions are being led by Peter Lavoie, a senior staff member of the National Security Council of the US. This created a storm in Pakistani media. Two things happened immediately after that. Number one, I was called to the Foreign Office at midnight, as I was a spokesperson of the ministry at that point, to issue a statement that no talks would be held on Pakistan's nuclear program during the visit of Pakistan's Prime Minister to Washington. Number two, the then Foreign Secretary of Pakistan, Mr. Azaz Chaudhry, announced in a press conference held at the Embassy of Pakistan, Washington, that Pakistan possessed tactical nuclear weapons and that they were meant to close the space for war that was created by India's Cold Start doctrine. The announcement also meant an acknowledgement of Pakistan's full spectrum deterrence, which was achieved in 2011. Ambassador Zamir Akram has mentioned nuclear discrimination against Pakistan in his book in detail. This has been manifest in many ways. For example, the US concluded 123 agreement or civil nuclear deal with India in 2005. Nuclear Supplies Group gave waiver to India in 2008. The US has been trying to promote India's membership of this group as well. However, such favors have not been extended to Pakistan. Whenever Western institutions such as Federation of American Scientists report number of weapons in the world, they indicate that Pakistan has 5 to 10 more nuclear warheads than India. This defies logic, as India can import nuclear material and technology from any country in the world because of the energy waiver, whereas Pakistan has to rely on its own resources only. Also, 8 Indian reactors remain outside the IAEA safeguards. India can therefore use nuclear material from these reactors for military purposes. In my view, Pakistan is deliberately stated to have more nuclear weapons than India in order to justify the NSC waiver granted to it in 2008. Let me conclude by underscoring the significance of Pakistan's nuclear deterrence and maintaining strategic stability in South Asia in the light of 2 recent developments. These developments could also have implications for Pakistan. Number 1, the US has resumed nuclear testing. Number 2, Russia has withdrawn its CTBT ratification. As a result, if India resumes nuclear testing, it would have serious impact on the deterrence and strategic stability in South Asia. Pakistan, therefore, has to remain watchful and continue with its policy of maintaining full spectrum deterrence as part of the credible minimum deterrence. Thank you. Let me now assume my responsibility as the chair of this event, and in that capacity, let me invite our first speaker, Ambassador Baluch, Director, Global and Regional Studies Center of IoBM. Ambassador Baluch has over 30 years of experience as a diplomat. He has held senior positions in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs as well as Pakistan's diplomatic missions abroad. He has served at Pakistan embassies in Syria, Kuwait, Mauritius, and Pakistan mission to the UN in New York. He was Pakistan's ambassador to Vietnam. He has also served as Director China, Japan, and Korea, and Joint Secretary, Prime Minister's Secretary. He extensively writes on international and national issues and is a regular columnist in English newspapers. He is the author of a recently published book, Duty to the Pen, Reflections on International and National Political Issues. He is invited to television talk shows as an expert on foreign policy and public policy issues. He is also regularly invited as a speaker to national and international seminars and workshops. Currently, he is Director, Global and Regional Studies Center, IoBM. He also teaches international affairs at IoBM.
Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it gives me immense pleasure to welcome you all this morning on behalf of Global and Regional Studies Center at IoBM. It's indeed an honor and privilege for GRSC to be hosting, in collaboration with Center for International and Strategic Studies, Sindh, the book launch of The Security Imperative, Pakistan's Nuclear Deterrence and Diplomacy by my senior ambassador Zamir Akram. He is a diplomat par excellence, an avid reader, a prolific writer, and in fact, a global thought leader on the geostrategic and geopolitical issues in general and disarmament in particular. Global and Regional Studies Center is a think tank at IoBM. We're engaged in research on international and national issues and public policy, and we have recently published a book, Duty to the Pen, Reflections on International and National Issues. We have been organizing webinars, seminars, book launches, and workshops. As a value addition, we have provided internship opportunities to our students of international relations for the past 3 years. We are embarking on another initiative of offering a 12 weeks diploma course in international politics and diplomacy from January 2024. We are also pleased to announce that GRSC and CISSS will be signing an MOU for future collaboration for organizing seminars and events, conducting joint research, as well as internship programs. Thanks to this energetic Executive Director CISSS, Ambassador Qazi Khalilullah, and support of President IoBM, Mr. Talib Karim, that we are implementing the MOU before it is even formally signed by holding this book launch today. A good augury indeed, because MOUs are signed but never implemented. We look forward to mutually rewarding partnership between GRSC and CISSS in days ahead. We have a highly qualified panel of experts who would be giving their invaluable reviews and comments on the book by Ambassador Zamir Akram. I would confine myself to submitting very, very brief random thoughts and reflections on the book, and particularly on the author, since I know him otherwise throughout our service there. In fact, in the foreign service, we often don't meet, but we do know each other through our works. So I think Ambassador Zamir Akram is one of those who is known not only in Pakistan, but all over the world for his great work. Ambassador Zamir Akram is one of the outstanding diplomats of Pakistan who combines patriotism, passion, professionalism, and profound perceptions on international relations. Zamir Akram, in his book, which I have read actually because he was so kind, Ambassador Qazi, to give me one, has demonstrated his, what I call 4P force. I hope you don't mind, sir. That is patriotism, passion, professionalism, and perception. In fact, I had underlined some of the paras in the book to read, but I know this paucity of time. So he's really the doyen of Pakistan's arms control diplomats, as is stated by Dr. Anton Levesque, research fellow at the International Institute for Studies, and yet another commentator, probably one of our senior ambassadors, said Zamir Akram is actually a diplomat warrior. Indeed, he is, and so is his great brother Zamir Munir Akram Sahab. We look forward to an enlightened comments and expert reviews on the book during the session. Thank you again for your presence, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you.
The comments on the book. Thank you also for your nice words about CISSS and myself. You're right, this is a practical example of our cooperation before the MOU could be signed. We are looking forward to signing that at the end of this session. Our next speaker is our Dr. Huma Baqai, Rector, Millennium Institute of Technology and Entrepreneurship. She will deliver keynote address. Before taking over as Rector of Millennium Institute of Technology and Entrepreneurship, she was Associate Professor of Social Sciences and Liberal Arts, and was also former Associate Dean, Faculty of Business Administration at IBA, Karachi. She has been working with both national and international media as an international relations expert and political analyst since 1999. She has 3 books to her credit. She has been associated with electronic media for 20 plus years. As a columnist, she has contributed 100 plus articles to renowned magazines and newspapers. She is a member of the advisory board of the Center for International Studies. Over to you, madam.
It's an absolute honor and pleasure to be here today. And I've been to IoBM several times, but I've come to this building for the first time. So congratulations, Talib, Karim Saab, beautiful infrastructure. And from what I see around the room, it's not just physical infrastructure, it's also a very outstanding academic infrastructure. I see a lot of familiar faces. If I take all your names, my time for the keynote speech will run out, but I'm grateful for your presence, especially the guests who've come on my invite, so thank you all. Mr. Talib Karim Saab, President IoBM, Ambassador Zamir Akram, who've become a friend, Ambassador Qazi Khalilullah, who's the Executive Director, CISSS, Mr. Ikram Sehgal, Security Analyst, Chairman, Pathfinder Group, and a mentor. And of course, Ambassador Baluch, Director Global and Regional Studies, Center of IoBM. The book, The Security Imperatives, Pakistan's Nuclear Deterrence and Diplomacy, a book by Ambassador Zamir Akram, and a foreword by Lieutenant General retired Khalid Kidwai, is Pakistan's narrative on one of the most critical issues of the 21st century. And it involves a border that is categorized post the nuclearization of the 2 countries as the second most dangerous border in the world. The first, of course, being between North Korea and South Korea. The book is a labor of love. You can see it from page 1. And it's a huge service to Pakistan. That is critically important. I have a special attachment to the book. And the reason for that was that perhaps now I can say it, that it came to me for a review from a publishing house. And because it came to me for a review, I actually read every single word of the book. And I'll tell you, even when I was reading that book, I thought, this is a very brave narrative. And of course, I wrote a very positive comment for the book. The book was not published by that publishing house. I was surprised that it has not happened. But of course, the book saw the light of the day when Paramount chose to publish the book. But what confirmed my earlier doubts about why the book was not published was when it was removed from an equally renowned but Western-dominated book-selling site. And that itself should be a source of inquisitiveness for all of us here. What is it in this book that a publishing house which is under Western influence would not publish it? A selling website who is also influenced by the West would remove it. I think that in itself should be enough reason for every single Pakistani policymaker and student of security and international relations to read this book. Since the day Pakistan gate-crashed the nuclear club, because of nothing else but defensive realism, it has faced negativity on its nuclear program, which continues to date, despite the fact that it is one of the best protected programs in the world, something acknowledged and vouched by Western watchdogs. And also how, on the debate on Pakistan's nuclear program, its peaceful use, which is also highlighted in the book magnificently, is completely subtracted from the debate. Like Pakistan is a country that does not need to make any progress on those fronts. But before, ladies and gentlemen, I share with you my views on the book, I'd like to narrate an incident to you, which will put the context to everything that we will be talking about today. I was in Kyiv, Ukraine, in 2015, right after Crimea was occupied, annexed by Russia, and I had a talk in a hall like this at a university. I was, by the way, representing Karachi Council for Foreign Relations. At that time, I was the vice chair or something, I don't remember my designation, but I had a talk there. My talk, of course, was on Pakistan's relations with Ukraine. So I did my talk, but after the talk, in the Q&A session, and subsequently for the next 40 minutes when I stepped out of the hall, I was surrounded by students who were only asking me one question, and that was, how did Pakistan retain its nuclear program? Because Crimea was a tourist resort and it had turned into a military post. And Ukraine was fearing then what is happening now. And ladies and gentlemen, Ukraine was a country that had rolled back its nuclear program on the assurance of the Western community, in particular, the United States of America. And subsequently, a professor from Ukraine, who was also an ambassador to Pakistan, Alina, came to IBA when I was serving there. And all she said to my students was that this world is all about realism. Pakistan is defensive realism. It's neither aggressive nor expansionist, only hardcore defensive realism. And I'm a realist. I'm a student of international relations, and I'm a hardcore realist, because that's where what is happening in the world today, that's where your survival lies. So this was my small thing, my contribution, but I think it's important that I narrated it today. The book brings forth deep insights into the functioning of our bureaucracy also. For example, how critical it is to have the right people appointed at the right place and have a listening top brass, something Pakistan has lacked often. But sometimes you're also good about it. So Pakistan's opposition to FMCT and the difference it makes when you have a listening top leadership. We would have signed it had those in power had not listened to somebody who was persistent that, please, we can't do that. And who was that person? That person was General Kidwai, who's been the custodian of this program since. General Kidwai, writing the foreword for the book, is testament to the kind of service Ambassador Zamir has done, and I quote from his foreword, from 1998 onwards, the resultant diplomatic tremors had to be managed by Pakistan's diplomacy and brilliant minds like Ambassador Zamir Akram for over 2 decades through the maze of sanctions and denials and up to the full maturity and operationalization of the program as a robust, operationalized nuclear deterrent force, a force which has literally outlawed major wars in South Asia and has secured Pakistan from India's kinetic, aggressive designs for all time. For all time. The book has 14 chapters, including future challenges and an epilogue, and covers the entire spectrum of Pakistan's nuclear program from its inception, acquisition, accommodation, and finally its strengthening and expansion. And like I say in my comment on the book, Pakistan's nuclear Pakistan's nuclearization generates considerable debate in international circuits, both academic and policy making even today. Zamir Akram brings in a fresh perspective rooted in ground realities. The book is well researched and backed by author's first-hand experience as an ambassador and his interaction with relevant people in positions of power. The book is not a figment of imagination. If you read the book, you will realize that there are dates given, times identified, incidents before, and what led to a certain event during this journey are so beautifully captured and narrated that despite the intricacy of the topic, it's a beautiful read. I enjoyed reading the book. It's good to read. And it also gave me a sense of pride, by the way. The author builds up Pakistan's case to become a nuclear state in the wake of security and strategic challenges it faced. He brings in Pakistan's perspective on the controversial topic to the forefront, largely embedded in defensive realism and peaceful use. Neither aggressive, nor offensive. The book, of course, is of value to academicians, researchers, journalists, policymakers, anyone and everyone interested in Pakistan's security metrics. I'm saying this at the risk of repeating myself. It is historically correct. That's critically important. It can be counter-checked. It is historically correct and futuristic in nature. It actually also has a chapter on the future challenges of Pakistan, which ring very true today. Interestingly, I love the way he has given starting dates of trends we grapple with today, India's military expansion and modernization of programs from 2003 to 2004, US-China rivalry that began in earnest in 2008 after China became the second largest economy, and every single incident has a date. Every single thing is captured with dates. It is Pakistan's case fought well against all accusations hurled at Pakistan from the day it became a nuclear power to date, and how Zamir Akram fought these battles relentlessly when he was in service, especially during the period when he was the permanent representative to the UN and other international organizations in Geneva in 2008 to 2015. And, ladies and gentlemen, he continues to do so by producing a piece of work like this and being an advisor to the Strategic Plans Division, a position he holds even today. Ladies and gentlemen, wars in today's world are fought not just on conventional fronts, we are good there, but on the diplomatic front, intellectual front, narrative front, propaganda front, economic front, and the list goes on. Zamir is our warrior on the diplomatic, narrative, and intellectual front. Silence in today's world is not golden. We have left our intellectual post unmanned. We need more people like Zamir coming out with Pakistan's perspective on issues that are critical to us, that are close to our core interests, that are our core interest. We need so many more. And Zamir, you should not stop writing. This book should be read by anybody and everybody who wants to counter the propaganda and the narrative spin India and Western powers give to Pakistan's nuclear program, amongst other things. And more importantly, there is no spin in this narrative. It is extremely well researched, supported by quotes of people who sit in important positions and have objectivity in their views. And I repeat, it is rooted in history. It was and it is Pakistan's quest for survival. Last but not least, the chapter on future challenges is sobering Because although Pakistan has, despite almost unsurmountable constraints and compulsions, has always been able to protect its core interests. Pursuing the nuclear program, protecting it, and expanding it to full spectrum deterrence is an issue of survival, because despite what India would like the world to believe, I quote from the book, in the words of two American experts on South Asia nuclear issues, Christopher Clary and Y.P. Noran, the reason why India has devoted considerable resources to develop and acquire capabilities that exceed what is required for a strictly retaliatory nuclear arsenal is that these developments are an early indication of India's exploration and development of options to target Pakistan's strategic nuclear system in a conflict. Ambassador Khalilullah referred to Operation Cold Start. That is the most pertinent example, if I may say so. They add that this shift to incorporating nuclear counterforce options may be an attempt to escape India's strategic paralysis following Pakistan's development of tactical nuclear weapons. I wanted to bring this out. The book is full of quotes and sentences that you want to come and talk about. I had to actually do a judgment call as to what I am going to come and quote here. But you see, why is this important? This is important because we are constantly told that we are an offensive state. India has moved beyond Pakistan. Pakistan should only now perhaps keep the deterrence to minimum and on the conventional front. There is no justification for the continued expansion of Pakistan's nuclear program. We should cap it. Ladies and gentlemen, we are in a state of defensive realism. We cap it when India caps it. And we've asked India to do it. And India declines every single time. And more importantly, it's not what India says. I just want you to look at the deployment of India's weaponry. It is 70%, in fact, almost 80% Pakistan specific. The book has been commented upon by some of the best brains in Pakistan and beyond. I have only picked up the quote of Dr. Int'l, the author of the book, Pakistan, A Hard Country. Because this man, I know him personally, I've met him, he traveled the length and breadth of Pakistan. He understands this country. Zamir Akram's rich and impressively detailed book, which cannot happen without research, is an indispensable guide to the development of Pakistan's nuclear deterrence, I repeat, nuclear deterrence, and nuclear rivalry with India, one of the most important relationships in the world today. And last but not least, I also want to bring to the fore that Ambassador Zamir Akram in 2017 was awarded the Star of Merit by the State of Palestine in recognition of his support and solidarity with the Palestinian people. I think we should bring this out today. While he served as the coordinator of the OIC group in the Human Rights Council. Perhaps, Ambassador Zamir, your next book should be on Palestine and its resistance, which stands revived with full force today. We need to counter the toxic propaganda that goes on that front also, because you've countered the toxic propaganda that Pakistan faces constantly on the nuclear front. Ladies and gentlemen, I thank you for your time and attention. I'm both humbled and honored to be among such an esteemed audience. I am particularly thankful to Mr. Talib Karim, President IoBM, for hosting the event on my humble request, and CISSS for supporting such events. I'm also indebted to CISSS for the same myself. They also sponsored the launch of my book at DHS of our university, for which I remain grateful. And by the way, that actually created a ripple effect. I've had 2 book launches after that in Islamabad. So thank you, CISSS, for that. And one more word, I just had to say this. We've been able to protect our core interest. But the future challenges that Ambassador Zamir Akram identifies in his book include political polarization in this country. This political polarization, which is now turned into inter- and intra-institutional conflict, is bringing our state down. Our ambassadors can fight for us, our diplomats can fight for us, our generals can strategize war, but your flag flies only as high in other countries as it does in your own. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen.
Well, thank you, Dr. Saiba, for your keynote address and valuable comments on the book. To me, they reflected your own sense of patriotism and commitment to protecting Pakistan's national interests at all levels. Our next speaker is Ms. Safia Malik, Research Officer at CISSS. She will present book review of Ambassador Zamir Akram's book. Ms. Safia Malik is Research Officer at CISSS. She is an Int'l scholar at the Department of International Relations, University of Karachi, and holds a master's degree in international relations from the same university. She has worked as an assistant researcher with a faculty member of Prince Mohammed bin Fahad University, Saudi Arabia. Since joining CISSS in 2021, Ms. Safia has written many book reviews that were published in various HEC-recognized journals, including Journal of Contemporary Studies, NDU, Journal of Security and Strategic Analysis, Strategic Vision Institute, Islamabad, and Margala Papers, NDU.
I feel honored to present a review of a very comprehensive book written by Ambassador Zamir Akram, titled Security Imperatives, Pakistan's Nuclear Deterrence and Diplomacy, which focuses on Pakistan's nuclear deterrence and diplomatic efforts to deal with multiple challenges faced by Pakistan since its inceptions. The book is very largely based on the personal experience of the author, spanning over 38 years in the Pakistan Foreign Service. Ambassador Zamir Akram's last assignment was as the permanent representative of Pakistan to the United Nations in Geneva, where he made use of his diplomatic skills to advance Pakistan's interest while dealing with various United Nations organizations, in particular Conference on Disarmament. As already have mentioned by Dr. Baqai, that the book is divided into 14 chapters that covers more Pakistan's foreign policy, including nuclear diplomacy from 1947 to 2020. It is a valuable addition to the existing literature, and it is an indispensable reading for understanding the rationale of Pakistan's nuclear program. Although I am supposed to present a book review of the whole book, but I feel that it would not be possible within a short span of time that is given to me. I will therefore highlight the main points of the book in the author's own words. Ladies and gentlemen, since the emergence of Pakistan as an independent state, it has been confronted security challenges coming from its eastern neighbor, India, from very one day. As underscored by the author in the book, the combination of security threats due to Pakistan's geopolitical compulsion and the legacy of history forced the country from its inception to seek external assistance and became the basis for seeking closer partnership with the United States and joining the 4 alliances. That includes, number 1, the Mutual Defense Agreement in 1954, the CETO 1954 and CENTO in 1955, and the Bilateral Defense Cooperation Agreement in 1959. Ambassador Zamir Akram has underlined that India's deep-rooted enmity with Pakistan, the Kashmir dispute, and Indian aspiration for regional hegemony are the real cause of tension between the two neighbors. India has outstanding disputes not only with Pakistan but also with all of its neighbors. That includes India has used its size and military muscles to annex Sikkim, balkanize Bhutan, dominate Nepal, and repeatedly interfere in the internal affairs of the Sri Lanka, Maldives, and Bangladesh. Even with more powerful China, New Delhi has laid claim to colonial-era borders, which led to the Sino-Indian War of 1962 and continuing territorial disputes that perpetuated border clashes in 2020. Ladies and gentlemen, with regards to the Indian nuclear program, the author has underlined that India acquired Canada-India Reactor Utility Services, that is called CISSS, a research reactor in 1954 for peaceful purposes that was misused for the production of weapon-grade plutonium for its 1974 nuclear test code-named Smiling Buddha. Even though the diversion of nuclear technology given to India for peaceful uses to military uses was a violation of its obligations. The Western countries continued their nuclear cooperation with India. In October 1974, just a few months after the test, Henry Kissinger, during his visit to India, reaffirmed that US would continue to supply nuclear fuel to India's 2 General Electric Tarapur reactor, despite the Indian detonation using US-supplied heavy water in the CISSS reactor to produce the fuel for its nuclear bomb. Including French Atomic Energy Commission also sent congratulations to its Indian counterpart. With respect to the rationale of Pakistan's nuclear program, the author has emphasized that the Indian quest for regional hegemony and its role in the dismemberment of East Pakistan in 1971, as already have mentioned by CISSS, set the path for Pakistan to acquire nuclear weapons. The then Prime Minister Zulfikar Ali Bhutto and Chairman Pakistan Atomic Energy Commission Munir Khan transformed the Indian threat into the matter of national survival. At the 1972 Multan Conference, the scientists were tasked to speed up the nuclear program in civil and military domains. The author has also highlighted the discriminatory approach of Canada against Pakistan as it conditioned CANP, Karachi Nuclear Power Plant, funded by Canada, to be placed under the IAEA safeguard. Unlike India, whose Canada-supplied nuclear reactor was not under such full-scope safeguards. However, despite the CIA assessment that the CANP reactor had accumulated 200 kg of reactor-grade plutonium by mid-1980s, which was enough nuclear material for 30 to 40 bombs, Pakistan, as a responsible state, decided to use its indigenously developed facilities for its nuclear weapon program. Ladies and gentlemen, in such a crass, hypocritical and discriminatory international environment, Pakistan sought to respond to the Indian nuclear test in order to protect its security threats. However, Pakistan initiated a number of nuclear-related proposals in the United Nations and later on in the Conference on Disarmament. These include, number 1, Pakistan proposed the creation of a nuclear weapon-free zone in South Asia. The proposal received an overwhelming response from non-nuclear weapon states during UN meetings held in New York and then in Geneva. However, India opposed the proposal. Pakistan withdrew this resolution after conducting nuclear tests in May 1998 in response to Indian nuclear test. Number 2, resolutions on nuclear security assurance, which call upon all nuclear weapon states to extend security assurance that they will not use or threaten to use nuclear weapons against non-nuclear weapon states. The resolution was supported by the majority of the UN member states and the member of the CD, including India. However, the French voted against it, and other nuclear weapon states, with the exception of China, voiced their reservations. The resolution continues to be sponsored by Pakistan. And number 3, Pakistan joined Sri Lanka's initiative to declare Indian Ocean as a zone of peace, an initiative which was launched by Sri Lanka in 1971. Ladies and gentlemen, the author has mentioned that soon after the Soviet withdrawal from Afghanistan, the US imposed sanctions on Pakistan through the Pressler Amendment. Therefore, Pakistan took various diplomatic steps to deflect pressure on its strategic program, which included, number 1, conclusion of a bilateral agreement with India in 1992 not to acquire, develop, deploy, or use chemical weapons. However, India was forced to acknowledge its secret possession of chemical weapon while becoming a party of a chemical weapon convention, which proved that India had lied about the non-possession of chemical weapons when it signed the bilateral agreement with Pakistan 5 months ago. Number 2, the creation of a zero missile zone in South Asia in 1993. This proposal was also rejected by India. Number 3, convening of a multilateral conference on security, arms control, and non-proliferation in South Asia in 1996. The proposal was also rejected by India. Number 4, in 1997, Pakistan proposed CBMs and non-proliferation measures to India, including mutual and equal restraint in the nuclear and ballistic missiles field and conventional weapon to ensure equal security for both countries. In May 1998, when India conducted its Pokhran 2 nuclear test, Pakistan had no choice but to test its own nuclear weapon. On 28 May 1998, Pakistan conducted its 5 nuclear tests and 1 nuclear test on 30th May 1998 to equalize it with the 1974 Indian nuclear test. Despite this, Pakistan continued its nuclear diplomacy. In 1998, Pakistan proposed a strategic restraint regime that aimed at ensuring nuclear and missile restraint, establishing a conventional balance, and resolution of all disputes between India and Pakistan. The proposal did not materialize owing to Indian objections. Ladies and gentlemen, the author has pointed out that globally Pakistan played a very crucial role in the negotiation of the Chemical Weapon Convention at the CD in 1993 that led to the formation of the Organization for Prohibition of Chemical Weapons, that is called OPCW. Pakistan also participated in the conclusion of the CTBT, that is called Comprehensive Test Ban Treaty, in 1996 as part of the non-proliferation measures. Ambassador Zamir Akram has highlighted Pakistan's position on CTBT and FMCT. With regards to CTBT, Pakistan conveyed that unlike India, it had voted in favor of the treaty in the United Nations and supported it in CD. However, in view of its security concerns, Pakistan stated that it would not sign the CTBT and only would do so if India signed as well. With regards to FMCT, Pakistan could agree to negotiations in CD provided the issue of asymmetry of fissile material stockpiles between India and Pakistan was addressed in the negotiations. To counter Indian warfighting doctrines, Pakistan has a full spectrum deterrence, that is called FSD, to lower the nuclear threshold and ensure deterrence across the entire spectrum of the threats. All these factors require that Pakistan's nuclear doctrine and posture would need to be flexible and dynamic in order to continue maintaining credible nuclear deterrence and strategic stability in the future. Pakistan established a robust command and control system under the Strategic Plans Division, that is called SPD, as the Secretariat of National Command Authority, that is called NCA. Ladies and gentlemen, the book also has a chapter on future political and economic challenges, as already have mentioned by Dr. Baqai, that concludes by suggesting measures for Pakistan's way forward. The author has underscored that Pakistan's geographical location can be turned into an opportunity rather than a challenge. Number 2, CPEC can expand and upgrade the country's infrastructure and energy production. Number 3, further strengthening the China-Pakistan partnership will not only boost the economic growth of the country, but also provide access to the latest generation of military technologies. Number 4, Pakistan needs to work closely with China, Russia, Iran to ensure a peaceful development in Afghanistan. In conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, the big book is a very valuable addition to the history of development of Pakistan's nuclear program. It enables a better understanding of Pakistan's security compulsions since independence and how Pakistan has dealt with them. The book is an interesting read for academics, scholars, practitioners, and students of international relations and strategic studies. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Safia, for a very well-written and well-presented book review. It's never easy to write a book review because you have to summarize hundreds of pages in 2 to 3 pages. So yours was a good one. Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Mr. Ikram Sehgal. He is chairman Pathfinder Group of Pakistan, which includes 2 of the largest private security companies in the country, namely Pakistan Security and Management Services Limited and Vakin Hut Pakistan PVT Limited. He is a defense analyst and a security expert. Mr. Sehgal is also involved in various national and international organizations. He is a member of World Economic Forum, International Organization for Migration, Director East-West Institute, a US-based think tank, and member World Economic Forum Global Agenda Council for Counterterrorism. He is a regular op-ed contributor to newspapers and frequently appears on current affairs programs. You have the floor, sir.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Ambassador Qazi Khalilullah, Ambassador Baluch, Dr. Huma Baqai, Ms. Safia Malik, and of course the speakers to follow me, the author himself, Ambassador Zamir Akram, and of course the concluded by Mr. Talib, Syed, Karim. First, I'd like to address what a sheer excellence you produced here, Talib, and your father. And I really, this is the first time that I visited here, and I think that I really have real admiration just for the way you brought up. It is when you have a place of academy, you must also create that atmosphere, and I think that atmosphere is created. I have just 2 days ago, I went to the Quwwat Academy near Kasur, Luliani, and which was with Dr. Amjad Saqib, and again, totally different. The architecture, the way the thing was brought up, and I mean, it was something that, you know, these are things which are resonate in your mind. And before that, let me also tell you about a college called Jajak Cadet College, which Lieutenant General Rasab has brought near his village. So, when you look at all that, you marvel at the fact that how people can create that place of sheer excellence for education, and yet, on the other end of the spectrum, our children are not getting the education they need. So I think there is a need for minds like yours and people to get together. And in the private sector, this is not going to happen in the public sector. The private sector to devise how we can really educate our youth. I am almost an imposter. I just graduated drinking the water of Ilyasi Masjid in the Pakistan Military Academy, right? I just managed it because luckily war came about in 1965 and we were sent out as cannon fodder. So I got my degree about almost 20 years afterwards when my course mate became the commandant of the academy, and he decided that we should at least get our degrees because we had done our academic courses. So I do not have the same background or the academic knowledge that you people possess. But I have, a basic feeling of the pragmatic nature that comes when you are brought up as a soldier, that you have to have knowledge. Whatever you do, you have to have that knowledge. And that knowledge must start, go up the spectrum. And, I'm sure you hear about the full spectrum deterrence for nuclear technology. We must have a full spectrum requirement for knowledge also. Now, I want to talk now about a little bit about the book itself. Ambassador Zamir Akram is a very good friend, a very close friend. And obviously I'm prejudiced. And he asked me, he said, did you read through the book? And honestly, I told him, no. I have scanned through it. But I scanned through it enough because some knowledge I did have. And obviously, some of the facts struck me of the things that I did not know. And I did pick up those because obviously I could never go into the intricacies of what was there. But I know enough to know that, he has really produced something that needed to be done. To create, to first of all dispel a lot of misunderstandings, a lot of misperceptions, to have facts, to make sure the facts and bring out the facts as they are, not live on myths. We live on myths, and one of the myths has been referred to when we went through a horrendous period in 2004, when almost our nuclear program came to a stop because of proliferation, and that was not even a conventional; there was a commercial enterprise instead of being this thing. When you look at our nuclear program, and you look at the way it has been guarded, you ask yourself, is this nuclear program in the same country that we are going through at the moment? And all the problems that we faced over the years, how have we managed to keep this nuclear deterrence intact? And it has been a combination of everything, whether it was finance, whether it was diplomacy, whether it was the security. So I would just like to go through the what I know as the KISS formula. Keep it simple, stupid. And that is, there was a need for it. And the need is well explained by the speakers before me, and I'm sure Ambassador Zamir Akram is also going to talk about it, so I'm not going to dwell upon it. There is a need. We have a foe that is implacable. The real face has only come out after Mr. Modi has taken over. Now the real venom that was ingrained in them for so many thousands of years, that has now come out, and it is displaying itself. And because of that, we needed a deterrence, a credible deterrence. And the nuclear thing provided the means of the overwhelming conventional superiority that they have to offset that. But there was a need to guard it. There was a need to, first of all, make it. There was a need, and we had to have a method. We had a method how to go about it. And I think, whereas I must give credit to people who, right up to the people who created the nuclear bomb, the people who went on and finally sort of exploded the bomb in response to the Indians thing. And then, of course, when it came about, then when SPD was created, and again, let me tell you, how much of you know about SPD? Thank God you don't know much about SPD. It has been very nicely created, something which should be kept confidential. So again, institution of excellence, which is there, Pakistani made, Pakistani deterrent, but kept this thing. And I think if you go through enough, I've gone through Ambassador Zamir Akram's book, because when he was the ambassador in the last ambassadorial posting, I was with him because of many reasons. I used to go and spend some holidays with him in Switzerland. Of course, Davos was there, and he would be there with us in Davos. But we asked him this question because he was dealing with nuclear, the thing, etc., and he was offered a job in the same capacity, and this was just ideally suited, not for him, but for the organization to have somebody like him. They needed him. They needed somebody who knew actually at the ground level and at the diplomatic level and at the security level, they knew that thing. And as somebody, let me tell you, who was not afraid to stand up and tell the truth. That is that thing. And I know that because Ambassador Zamir Akram does not know, but I've had long discussions with, let us say, a critic of his called Dr. Graham Allison, right, when I went to Kennedy School of Government to lecture. And, a number of times he asked me to lecture there. And then, Graham Allison was always in awe of Ambassador Zamir Akram. And he always asked me, he says, did he have a nuclear background? And I said, I really don't know. Because obviously I didn't want to get into a information campaign with him. So we had the method to create this, and we did it right. And we had created a very good organization, and that organization was protected by people like Ambassador Zamir Akram. Because it had to be a combination of diplomacy. And I do expect the other day, Dr. Huma Baqai and myself were in conversation in Islamabad, and a gentleman, obviously from the Foreign Service, retired gentleman, told me, he said, when you're discussing these foreign policy, there should have been a diplomat there, and you both are not diplomats. So we were, taken to task because we didn't know enough. But the point is, we did develop the weapon, the warhead, and we did deliver the means to deliver them. Now I'm going to take you away from all this. In 2003, I visited Israel, and I won't go into the details of how I went there, but I had the chance of going in, among other places, to 4 of their think tanks. And every think tank, one thing I came about, and I mentioned that to Dr. Huma Baqai in this conversation, the Israelis had one question only about Pakistan. Pakistan's nuclear capability. Because we were the only Muslim nation in the world having the nuclear ability and the means to deliver them. And they were apprehensive about it. I tried my best to explain to them that our nuclear deterrence is India specific. We have no other means, otherwise we are not getting ballistic missiles or something like that to have a range that we can hit Israel or something like that. But they were always worried about proliferation. They worried that we would pass on our nuclear this thing. And unfortunately, soon after I came back, this unfortunate thing happened. So, I think in that sense, they were right, in the sense it could not be official, it could be non-official. But again, I tell you that we had a tremendous chance. And when I came back, I wrote an article called Visiting the Forbidden Land. And I said in that article, let us not have diplomatic relations with Israel till such time that the Palestine question is solved. Let us not have it. But we must recognize them. We must recognize them and have a dialogue with them. Because if we have a dialogue with them, there is a deterrent that they must understand. And that deterrent is based on the fact that we are also a Muslim country. We also have the same feelings, the same emotions when we see Gazans dying. And I'm actually, proud of the fact that when after his retirement, when he was member of the human rights thing in United Nations, Geneva, he went and he was given the Star of Palestine. So I will also say that I know a little bit about let us say the clandestine way. China, of course, helped us. But there were a lot of other people who were working to get the requirement for the nuclear material into Pakistan, the requirement for the delivery systems into Pakistan. And I came across a gentleman called Dr. Fazl Karam Ali. He unfortunately died about 16 years ago. And after his retirement, he one day landed upon me and said, I would like to write some articles on this thing. And looked at this gentleman, very old, limping, and I said, well, in the defense journal which I had, and he said, he said, no, you give me this much. He said, I said, what are you going to do with it? You must be having enough pension. He said, no, I will like to buy my medicine from the money that you give me. So he worked for me with about almost 2-3 years. And I learned a lot from him. And I learned how he was based in Singapore, right? This gentleman was based in Singapore, living as a Hindu, right? And how he managed to get the material which was required here, this thing, etc. And it was fascinating. And then I realized that this nuclear deterrence that we have was not the work of one man. It's the work of a lot of Pakistanis. And it showed the Pakistani potential for what it is. We are a great nation. We just don't live up to our potential. It's our unfortunate, let us say, dilemma that what we can do, we don't really, we don't really exploit it. It's like this guy, our batsman who came and hit sixes the other day and got us close to a semi-final, maybe, so we don't use our potential where we should have used our potential at the right time, right? So I will just say, in the end, a few things which will say that, look at the people who have given the testimonials for this book, and it reads like a who's who. Because if you were to look at the diplomats, the academics, the military personnel, the foreign nuclear experts, the foreign academics, and then you have General Zubair, who was chairman of the Joint Chief Staff, and before that, actually, I think he was the one who hired Ambassador Zamir Akram when he was the head of SPD, right? Then Javed Jabbar, of course, we know other things, Dr. Anatole Levine and Antoine Levesque, of course, Riaz Khokhar and Shamshad Ahmad, I think, par excellence foreign secretaries, and another academic, Zafar Nawaz Jaswal, and I will never forget, of course, Dr. Huma Baqai, because, more or less, whenever they sort of have a conversation, I'm put on a panel with her, and I have this inferiority complex of going in with somebody who knows far more than I will ever know, right? I will say this to you, all the people who are here and the people who are outside, you're lucky to have the ability to absorb knowledge in an institution like this. And in the end, I will only say to you, Ambassador Zamir Akram or Zamir Bhai, that it's not only my pride to have you as a friend, it makes me proud to have you as one of the best Pakistanis that I have never known. And it is beyond question that you and your elder brother, whom of course I revere as much, that thing, and I see him in action even 2 days ago, despite the fact that he's in his 80s, right? It's extraordinary for what you have done. And this book is an extraordinary piece of work. And it was required. And it was very much something that built that thing. And I go away with the thing because of people like you. I say every day that when I wake up in the morning, I say, Pakistan, thank God for being my country.
Thank you, sir, for your very insightful comments. We couldn't agree more with you that relationship between India and Pakistan has been most difficult under Prime Minister Modi's leadership, and it's because of our nuclear program that we have been able to effectively deal with acts of aggression from India under Prime Minister Modi. The best example of that is the Balakot incident, when on 27 February 2019, Pakistan was able to shoot down 2 Indian aircraft and capture 1 pilot, who was later returned as a gesture of goodwill. Subsequently, we heard Prime Minister Modi talking about Qatl ki Raat. However, they could not muster enough strength to attack Pakistan again, because they had seen our ability as well as the resolve to respond effectively to the act of aggression that was committed on Balakot on 26 February 2019. Our next speaker is the author of the book, Ambassador Zamir Akram. He is currently advisor to Strategic Plans Division, Government of Pakistan, as Pakistan's ambassador and permanent representative to the UN and other international organizations in Geneva from 2008 to 2015. He played a leading role in disarmament, human rights, refugees, humanitarian affairs, trade and development, intellectual property, labor and health, among other issues. As Additional Foreign Secretary in the Prime Minister's office, he was responsible for Pakistan's foreign, security, economic, energy, health and education policies. Ambassador Akram joined the Foreign Service in 1978 and served in the former Soviet Union, India, the United States twice, and the United Nations twice. He has dealt with key issues including Afghanistan, nuclear non-proliferation, arms control and disarmament, disaster response and recovery, UN reforms, human rights, and counter-terrorism in his career. Ambassador Akram holds a master's degree in international relations from the London School of Economics and Politics and Political Science. He served as Honorary Dean of the Geneva School of Diplomacy during 2010, where he was awarded an honorary doctorate. Ambassador Akram retired from the Foreign Service of Pakistan in October 2015. Sir, you have the floor.
Assalamu alaikum. I want to begin by thanking Mr. Talib Karim, President of the Institute of Business Management, for making available this excellent institution for today's event. I also want to thank my colleagues and friends, Ambassador Qazi Khalilullah and GR Baluch, for working together to bring us all together for this launch of my book. I also am overwhelmed by the extremely kind words that have been said about me personally and about the book that I have written, by my friends, and especially by people that I hold in the highest esteem, Mr. Ikram Sehgal and Dr. Huma Baqai, who I am privileged to say are also very close friends of mine. I'm also grateful to the words that have been spoken by other speakers in this context, and the explanation that has been given, the expose that has been given about my book. So I'm not going to go into detail about this, about the book, but let me speak briefly about why I wrote this book and the sources, and also some of the aspects that I believe are important to know and have not been covered. So the reason for me to write this book was actually, as it says in the opening introduction, is to give the Pakistani side of the story. So it is a Pakistani narrative in response to what I believe is a largely biased or even a negative narrative that has mostly come out from the West about Pakistan's nuclear program. And I say this because I think that the Western writers, analysts have not actually made an attempt to explain the rationale for Pakistan's journey towards the acquisition of nuclear weapons. What was the, as I call the book, the imperative? What was the imperative for us to do this? And I think that is not really brought out in the accounts that have been written in the West. And it is an unfortunate fact that many of the people in Pakistan, and I experienced this myself when I would be in a room like this with university students and others, even some of my colleagues from the Foreign Office discussing these issues, where I would be asked questions or be given comments that were essentially based on a Western perspective or a reading of the Western narrative on Pakistan's nuclear program. And so I felt very strongly that we needed to give our side of the story. The other part of it is that this was an imperative, because since its very independence, Pakistan as a country has faced almost a perennial quest for security, and it is a result of our geography and our history, and it has all combined. But the point is that this is a continuing challenge, and if we believe that this challenge is over, then we would be very, very wrong in such belief, because as I have tried to explain towards the end of the book, that we continue to face these challenges and we continue to need to enhance and ensure our security through this nuclear capability. Now, the reason why we feel that it is essential, or I felt that this was essential to write, is because we historically, from the beginning, since independence, relied on conventional deterrence between India and Pakistan, which is a much more powerful country fielding a much larger armed forces. And in that environment, conventional deterrence continued to break down. And our reliance on international alliances did not ensure our security, as the 1971 war demonstrated. Now, through this period, of course, within Pakistan, our nuclear capability did not emerge from a vacuum. And that's one of the first things that I want to emphasize, which I think needs to be appreciated. From independence onwards, we benefited from the contributions of some of the most eminent nuclear scientists, such as Dr. Abdul Salam and so many others, who contributed to the nuclear learning in Pakistan, beginning from very humble, small nuclear facilities in Government College, Lahore, where it spread largely as a consequence of the Atoms for Peace program that the United States had offered us, and we took full advantage of that program, and we developed our scientific and technological capabilities in the nuclear field. So when and at that time, of course, there were people with foresight. Some were scientists like Munir Ahmed Khan, others like Foreign Minister Zulfikar Ali Bhutto, who felt that we, like India, should move towards the development or the acquisition of technology, not just for the civilian uses of nuclear technology, but also to develop the potential for nuclear weapons, because that is where the Indians were going, even in the early 60s, mid-60s into the 70s. We knew what was happening, we knew what was what people like Homi Bhabha were saying, what even people like Nehru were saying about at least about India acquiring the capability for nuclear weapons. And so, but this debate was countered. People like Bhutto as the foreign minister and his colleagues, Aziz Ahmed, Agha Shahi, Iqbal Akhund, so many others in the Foreign Office that were tasked by him to work on these issues. And that's why a byline of this book is Pakistan's nuclear deterrence and diplomacy, because there was a role that diplomacy played in the decision making and then later on in the promotion and protection of the program. So on the other hand, of course, of the debate were people in the finance ministry, Mr. Syed and others, who eventually convinced President Ayub Khan that this would not be the kind of expenditure that we should incur, and that if we did go down this path, we would be denied assistance from the US and others. And so that argument prevailed until, of course, Mr. Bhutto came to power himself, and that changed the entire dynamics. And the 72 meeting of the nuclear scientists, as has been mentioned, and then of course the final argument as such was the Indian nuclear test of 1974, which left no doubt at all in anybody's mind that that is the route that we need to take. And we immediately faced discriminatory sanctions. Virtually nothing happened to the Indians. In fact, Mr. Henry Kissinger is on record as having said that nothing is to be gained by punishing the Indians now that they have crossed the nuclear threshold. And so US assistance continued. Even US supplies of fissile material for this very same reactor, the Tarapur reactor, from where the material had been diverted towards nuclear weapons production, the nuclear fuel from the US continued to be supplied to them. But the adoption of the Solar's Amendment, the Symington Amendment, the Glenn Amendment, this whole slew of US legislation was aimed against preventing, essentially, without naming Pakistan, but essentially preventing Pakistan from going down the same road and acquiring the same capabilities as India had done. And I remember a conversation which I have recorded in this book much later, in the early 90s in the US, when I was talking to a legislative assistant of Senator Glenn's, who was he was leading the charge against Pakistan's nuclear program. And I asked him that, look, these are the facts. We are faced declared by a well-known nuclear weapon state, and it is a country with which we have disputes and we have fought wars. It is in response to this that we need to develop our own nuclear deterrence. And the response was that that is the American objective, is to ensure non-proliferation, and we really don't care about your security, and we really don't care what happens to your security vis-a-vis. So this was a very, very, it was an example of a very, very clear discriminatory attitude, which was unacceptable and remains unacceptable, because the discrimination also remains on the ground. So the other point is, why the discrimination? We need to get to the root of why the discrimination. There's an incident when when the Chinese detonated their nuclear weapons, when they carried out their nuclear tests, the US actually considered offering assistance to India to develop its nuclear weapon. This is a fact which many people don't know. So why was there a double standard, an acceptance of actual even assistance for India to develop its nuclear capability, but denial of Pakistan? In my view, it can be explained in one word: Israel. That is the bottom line. The US, the West as a whole, do not want any Muslim country, any Islamic country to acquire nuclear weapons, because potentially any Islamic country that has nuclear weapons will be a potential threat to Israeli security. That is what it is. And we will never find that in any writings, but we will find that in the way the US pursues the policy on non-proliferation towards us, towards others, Iran in particular. Now, how did we get away with it? It was, in my estimation, pure luck. Because from 1974 to 1980, Pakistan was under immense amount of sanctions. The amendments that I mentioned, the Carter administration's virtual listing of Pakistan as a rogue state. And if we believe what Mr. Bhutto has written, his actual removal from power, because he was warned by Kissinger and others that if you persist with your nuclear program, we will make an example of you. And they did make an example of it. So what happened? And I think what happened was the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan, which provided us with the strategic space and time to pursue that program. Because the deal that President Zia struck with President Reagan was that we will not embarrass you, we will continue with our nuclear weapons program, but we will not embarrass you by conducting a nuclear test. And the US agreed, because at that time, during that period, for the next 10 years, the US priority was to ensure Pakistan's cooperation to bleed the Soviets in Afghanistan. And that is the window that we received, that we got, the 10 years that we got from virtually from 79 to 89 to make this progress. And in 1984, we were able to conduct our first two cold tests. And a cold test is basically the same as a nuclear test, a hot test, which has the fissile material inside it. But a cold test is one that it does not have the fissile material inside it, but it demonstrates that the weapon actually works. And if there was fissile material, there would be release of nuclear energy. So the these two tests were conducted in '84. One of them was by the Pakistan Atomic Energy Commission. The other was by the Kahuta Research Labs or the Khan Research Labs. Now here is a story which I want to tell again, which has not been talked about, but it's there in the book. And it speaks to what Ikram Sehgal said about the contribution of our scientists. I mean, one of the most important aspects of the success of this program was the single-minded determination of our nuclear scientists, engineers, technicians, workers, even the people who are working to ensure the security of these facilities. So the biggest thing was that the contribution that in my view, that Dr. A.Q. Khan made was that he pioneered the uranium route to nuclear weapons. Now, up to that point, nuclear weapons had been made with plutonium. You can go with two basic materials, uranium or plutonium. And so virtually all the nuclear weapons up to that point had been through the plutonium route. Dr. A.Q. Khan convinced Prime Minister Bhutto that the enrichment technology with which he had been working in Holland could be used, because it was being used in the civilian sector, to enrich uranium up to about 20%. He said that if we had enough centrifuges and we were able to enrich the uranium up to 90%, that would be weapons grade, and it could be used in a bomb. And despite criticism from his scientist colleagues, who basically derided it by saying this is some kind of, they called it matka technology, it's not going to work, because it is, the centrifuge is really like, a matka where you churn the milk. But it did. And this was the great innovation and contribution that Dr. A.Q. Khan made, and that has remained and has demonstrated. Pakistan is the country that demonstrated that the uranium route to nuclear weapons is possible, and the highest praise for that is that the Indians have copied the very same technology, the P1 technology as it's called. Now, another very important factor is that it was the foresight of Prime Minister Bhutto and then subsequently General Zia, who pursued the same program, that they pursued it on two tracks, the plutonium and the uranium track. Because they knew that the plutonium track, which was the more public one, because we had an agreement with the French to supply a reprocessing plant and the Germans to supply a heavy water plant, which was needed to pursue the plutonium route, this could be curtailed because of American pressure. And though initially the French government resisted this pressure, but finally they succumbed, and the reprocessing plant had been curtailed, and so was the heavy water plant. But during this period, the Pakistani scientists and PAEC had been able to acquire the blueprints, the maps, the designs, and using the knowledge that I mentioned that was there, were able to put this together themselves, not by importing huge big plants, which they couldn't because of the sanctions regime, but by acquiring small plants, small parts actually, small little parts under different guises. And this was termed by a Western report as the espionage of the century, where these small parts were supplied or sent to Pakistan, sometimes even in diplomatic bags. This is something which was a contribution, if you will, about how we put this thing together. And as a result of that, these, of course, some of them were discovered. The margaring steel was discovered, or some other elements were discovered, and we, in the diplomatic community, I remember I was in Washington, we had to keep fighting this battle with the Americans about what was and was not allowed and sanctioned and whatever. But at some times when things were not working, or when it couldn't be accessed, that's And this is the remarkable part. I remember this conversation where there were some parts that we could not access. And eventually, of course, we went ahead with this program. And then even Dr. A.Q. Khan was asked, how did you get this plan? How did you get these parts? He sort of turned it and he shrugged it off. He says, I got them made in Gujranwala. So it could be done. It depends. And this is the other thing that I want to say. Again, A.Q. Khan was asked, how did the nuclear weapons program succeed? When everything else in Pakistan seems, we can't even seem to be able to put together a motorcycle. How did you make a nuclear weapon? And he said two things: consistency of leadership and consistency of funding. These were the two things that made it possible. So what it requires is national consensus. If we have national consensus on anything, we are able to do this. But the fact is that, unfortunately, a commentary on our political situation is that on most things we lack national consensus, but this is one thing. But having developed the weapon in 84, as I said, there was an immediate impact. In 1987, if you recall, the Indians conducted what was known as the brass tacks military exercises, which was seen in Pakistan as a threat to our security because it could be a guise under which a surprise attack could be launched. At that time, Mr. A.Q. Khan was asked to give an interview to an Indian journalist, Kuldeep Nayyar, which appeared in the Daily Telegraph. It appeared sometime later, but Kuldeep Nayyar, as was expected, immediately reported his conversation with Dr. A.Q. Khan to the Indian Embassy. And in this interview, Dr. A.Q. Khan basically conveyed that Pakistan has the bomb. He said that we have the ability to make a bomb at short notice. And this, some months later, hit the international media when it came out in the Telegraph, and so there was a big storm about it. And but the message reached the Indians. And just to make sure that there was no misunderstanding, President Zia himself decided to attend a cricket match that was going on in Jaipur, where he basically conveyed the same message to Mr. Rajiv Gandhi that both of us now have the nuclear weapon, and if you attack, if your brass tacks exercises is aimed against attacking Pakistan, and if our security comes under threat, then we will not refrain from using these weapons to protect ourselves. And that's when brass tacks was called off. This was the first demonstration of nuclear deterrence at play in South Asia. Although it has been what I call virtual deterrence because it was non-weaponized deterrence. But the fact is that there was a capability that for the first time prevented the outbreak of a war between India and Pakistan. And a senior Indian diplomat at that time, when this agreement or this understanding came about, stated that Pakistan and India have already fought their last war. So this emergence of nuclear deterrence, of course, there was a whole lot of what happened. The Americans imposed Pressler sanctions and that's been mentioned in the book and things like this. But the other big element, the other big aspect that I want to talk about are two things. Basically, cold start and what is happening now. The 1998 tests, of course, there's a whole chapter on what happened after the Indians conducted the test and how the Americans tried to pressurize us not to test. And then finally, after the tests, they engaged in a dialogue with us and the Indians, but it was an unfair and unequal dialogue. With Pakistan, they were asking us to demonstrate restraint. With the Indians, they were asking them to how India can behave so that it can become a part of the International Nuclear Club and be recognized as a responsible nuclear weapon state. So it was an entirely different kind of discussion or dialogue that was taking place between us and Pakistan, which is also very important. But the important thing was that the tests basically wiped out India's advantage over Pakistan in conventional weapons. And the Indian effort since then to this day has been to somehow recreate the salience of their conventional weapons numerical superiority over Pakistan. And so in 2004 they declared this program and this doctrine called Cold Start, which basically envisages the ability for Indians to engage in a conventional war below the nuclear threshold by launching coordinated, shallow attacks into Pakistani territory and then holding the territory as leverage to negotiate with Pakistan. And that presented Pakistan with a serious concern, because it's the nature of nuclear weapons that what we possess, both sides possessed, were what are known as counter-value nuclear weapons, which are these huge, big nuclear weapons that are used to destroy cities. So both sides possess those kind of weapons. And the dilemma for Pakistan was that if the Indians were to launch a cold start type of offensive and were able to overcome the numerically inferior Pakistani troops or Pakistani forces and were able to get hold of vital territory, for Pakistan to respond by the use of its counter-value nuclear weapons by bombing, say, Delhi or Bombay or something, that would enable the Indians to do the same thing, and which they were threatening in any case to use massive retaliation by bombing Karachi, Lahore, etc. So there was this gap. How are we going to stop a cold start type of operation that is launched by the Indians? One option was, of course, to develop our conventional capabilities up to the same level as that of the Indians, which was an economic impossibility because of the financial problems that we faced. In any case, there was also the problem of access to weapon systems, because as you know, we were under sanctions, so where would we get except from China, but other than that, there was nothing else. So the other option, the more cost-effective option, was to develop low-yield nuclear weapons. And this is where the PAEC's work on the plutonium reactors at Khoshab actually enabled us to do that, because we were able to use the plutonium that was produced to develop low-yield nuclear reactors. Again, a tribute to our scientists. Another tribute to our scientists was the CISSS group, and even to propose Indian membership of the nuclear suppliers group, a group that had been created ironically in response to the Indian nuclear test of 1974 to prevent the proliferation of nuclear weapons and technology. So when these developments took place, we had to respond, because on the ground, Indian ability to import fissile material from the countries with which it has signed agreements, there are 11 of them as a result of the NSG waiver. It enhances India's ability to use its own indigenous sources of fissile materials for weapons production. So they can now use their own fissile material for only exclusively for weapons production. But because the safeguards agreements that relate to this arrangement for NSG waiver signed by the IAEA, which an IAEA official called a Mickey Mouse agreement, there's no safeguards at all. And so it allows, in fact, the Indians to be able to divert the fissile material that is in their civilian reactors, the imported fissile material in their civilian reactors, to their weapons production reactors, which are not under safeguards. And Ikram Bhai referred to Graham Ellison. I think he was upset by making my when I made this point, because the Harvard University's Belfair Center has itself written 3 reports on how the IAEA's safeguards agreements are inadequate. But I think they were upset because I had stated this, I had claimed this in the conference on disarmament much before these reports came. So they were wondering whether I'm a nuclear scientist to know that. But you don't have to be a nuclear scientist, you just have to have common sense that if you can import tons of fissile material, you're going to use it to develop weapons, and especially if those are unsafeguarded nuclear facilities. And Indians have 22 unsafeguarded nuclear facilities. So I mean, this was just common sense. But anyway, so the point is that India has already had, because it started its program way back in, say, 1970s, whereas ours started in the 1980s virtually, more or less. So they had an existing asymmetry in stockpiles of nuclear weapons. And then the NSG waiver takes place, which adds to their ability to stockpile more fissile material. And for us in that environment to have agreed to a treaty that would ban the future production of fissile material would be suicidal, because we would have ensured that the asymmetry becomes perpetual. In perpetuity, we would be facing an asymmetry. So that's when we took a decision, and as was mentioned, General Kidwai played a very key role. We had a meeting of the NCA, and etc. So, but where are we now? The US-India strategic alliance is now moving into a direction with the development of India's strategic capabilities way beyond what they were after 1998. The Indians are now in a position to employ air, land, and sea-based delivery systems, aircraft, missiles, surface and underwater or submarines. Some of them, 2 of them are nuclear-powered submarines. They have in place a working ballistic missile defense system. They have tested an anti-satellite weapon, which takes the arms race into outer space as far as Pakistan and India are concerned. And they are in the process of developing a hydrogen or a fusion bomb in the south of India, which, as you know, would be 10 times much more destructive than a regular nuclear weapon or a fission bomb. So this is the kind of nuclear and strategic and conventional build-up that we are witnessing in India, with the result that people that were quoted, Vipin Narang and Christopher Clary, Vipin Narang, who is an American of Indian origin, he is a professor at MIT. He actually even advocated that India should decouple its strategy towards China and towards Pakistan, and vis-a-vis Pakistan, India is now in a position to be able to actually launch a preemptive disarming nuclear strike. Now, those of you who are students of this subject would know that a preemptive disarming nuclear strike means basically destroying the opponent's entire arsenal of nuclear weapons and delivery systems. So this kind of massive first strike on Pakistan obviously requires a response. And if we were to simply say that, well, we will exercise deterrence by threatening to destroy Bombay or Delhi, the point is that if they conduct a preemptive first strike, you won't have anything left to do it with. That's the current environment. And this environment is then made more complex. If you remember in June, when Mr. Modi visited Washington, the US concluded some very critical agreements which a lot of people have not yet been able to assess. But these are agreements that ensure American-Indian cooperation in new and emerging technologies such as cyber, quantum computing, artificial intelligence, and space. And these are areas where the next generation of warfare will be fought. And unfortunately, we have faced these kind of challenges, the nuclear challenge first, the missile challenge second, and now the AI and new and emerging technologies challenges now. We are way behind the curve as compared to India. That is the reality. But again, I am confident that the efforts we are making and the efforts that my institution is making, we are going to be able to ensure that we continue to maintain credible nuclear and credible deterrence, cross spectrum credible deterrence against the Indians in the future. A final word about the Israeli part, because we were talking about it. The US, as I said, is mostly concerned about Israel. It uses issues about regional destabilization, maintenance of peace and security as kind of arguments that can be put forward, but behind it is the Israeli, and that's now come out into the forefront. Because with the development of Pakistan's Shaheen 2 and 3 missiles, the Americans are increasingly talking about the range of Pakistani missiles that can threaten US interests in the region, including US friends in the region now. And that is obviously they are talking about Israel, and they have actually said that we are concerned about the Israeli security. Well, in that regard, we have tried to make the argument that from the very beginning, Pakistan's nuclear doctrine is India-specific, it's India-centric. Our nuclear capability is to deter India, it is not to be used for any other purpose. And so, as such, we do not threaten any other country. But the concerns remain, and the demand on Pakistan remains to exercise unilateral restraint, a demand that we continue to reject, and this is an ongoing discussion that we have with the US and is likely to continue into the future. So once again, thank you very much for this opportunity. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, sir, for your very detailed comments on your own book, and it was a pleasure to listen to you. Thank you for sharing additional information with us based on facts, your personal interaction, and your experience of serving in key capitals. Now I have the pleasure to invite President of IoBM, Mr. Talib Syed Karim. He is serving as the president of this prestigious institution and holds a bachelor's degree in systems engineering and a master's degree in economics with specialization in international trade, both from the University of Arizona, USA. He has worked for a financial institution for 10 years before joining the institute full-time in 1997. He has also taught economics at the University of Arizona, USA and IoBM. He also attended the Oxford Advanced Management and Leadership Program at Oxford University. He is an executive council member of the Management Association of Pakistan and the president of Marketing Association of Pakistan, and represents the institute in various associations nationally and internationally.
Ambassador Zamir Akram, Mr. Ikram Sehgal, Dr. Huma Baqai, Ambassador Khalilullah, Ambassador GR Baluch, faculty members, distinguished guests, students, Assalamu alaikum and good afternoon. So what I'll do is I'll limit myself to 5 minutes because I see a lot of people taking notes, and I'm sure those notes are questions that needs to be asked from the author or other speakers. Mr. Ikram Sehgal, we have known each other for a long time, and I think I'll blame it on myself that this is his first visit, and I was a bit taken aback that I had failed to invite him to the campus. And my apologies, and I hope that you'll continue to visit this campus. Dr. Huma Baqai, when she called me maybe a couple of weeks ago, talking about the book launching and telling me that one of the universities at the last minute refused to host the event, which I was taken by a surprise there why that has happened. And I said, why not? I think we will be more than happy to have this book launching, and that's one of the activities that we are engaged in at IoBM, especially after Ambassador Baluch took over as the director of the center, to have that type of interaction, to have that type of dialogue, amongst retired diplomats or bureaucrats or then people from the industry, because that type of interaction helps our students, our researchers, and our faculty members, to become more knowledgeable about what's going on. And what Ambassador Akram talked about, about his experience and about the book, I think it's fascinating to know, and also a bit scary on the current situation that he explained or he talked about towards the end. But I think what the book talks about, and what he has mentioned, that we are in safe hands. I think that deterrence hopefully will work, and if that would not have been there, then I think we would have been in real trouble, as Huma mentioned about Ukraine and that what is happening in that country. Although they had the capabilities, but because of some agreement, they are in the mess that they are in. First of all, thank you for being here, Ambassador Saab. I think I heard a lot about you, but I think I had an opportunity and an honor to meet you today. I think just 15 minutes before the session, we were together in my office, and we talked a lot about different things. And I hope that you will visit us again soon, and would like to have a session with you and our senior students, so that the younger generation gets to know more about what is really happening. We talk about a lot of things like economic issues and other issues, political issues, and leadership issues. I think we also talk about consistency of leadership, and I think that is lacking in this country, and that's why we are what is happening is because of that. Political instability is one of the main issues that we are facing. So I think these type of interaction, I think, makes us more aware of various things that is going behind in the background. I think that the institution that we are representing, I think they are doing a great job in keeping this country safe, and I think youngsters need to know that. One point that Mr. Ikram Sehgal raised about education and the role of private sector and the institutions, I totally agree with him. You know, with 28 million kids out of school in this country, I think we are facing not just this threat from our neighbors, but threat of our future generation. I mean, when these someone mentioned in our conference yesterday that when these 28 million kids grow up with no skills, then what will happen? So although we take pride in having a very young population, but again, I don't think we have done, I think we have done a great disservice to the young generation by not educating them, by not giving them proper nutrition, you know, the growth, you know, the health issues with the kids. So I think that's another time bomb that we are going to face after a few years is our youth. And I think all of us need to work together to ensure that, you know, we do that, we contribute in that area. So thank you again for being here, and I think it was a great event, and I think question answer session should start, and I know we need to limit it because we are running out of time, but I'm sure some of you do have questions. So over to you, Ambassador Sahab.
Thank you very much, sir, for your concluding remarks. I wish to take this opportunity to thank you for your consent to host this great event here, and also grateful to Dr. Huma Baqai for suggesting IoBM for this event. And as mentioned by President of IoBM, this really has been a very successful event. Now the floor is open to questions. Please.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. My name is Dr. Shaida Wizarat, and I am Dean, College of Economics and Social Development at the Institute of Business Management. I would like to take the opportunity to congratulate Ambassador Zamir Akram for a very, very interesting. I had come here just for a short while because I had something else to do, but I ended up, I just couldn't get up because the discussion was so absorbing, and so it was very, very interesting. I just, towards the end, you mentioned about India acquiring that, preemptive strike deterrence. So I wanted to know whether India has already acquired it, or is it in the process of acquiring it?
Thank you very much. Before I answer your question, I want to tell you and everyone else here that your sister, I think Talat Wazarat, was my teacher in Karachi University. So if you could convey my best regards to her, I would be very grateful to you. As of now, the Indians are not in a position to launch such a strike. Because of time factors, I did not go into what our response is to this. But I'm glad you asked me this question so I can dilate on what our response is. Basically, again, we were faced with the choice of actually matching India weapon for weapon as such, and that would mean developing our own ballistic missile defense system or other systems which the Indians are relying upon to basically be able to launch a preemptive strike, which is that if you have an effective ballistic missile defense system and you launch a preemptive strike and you destroy most of your opponent's capabilities to respond, then whatever is left, they can be taken care of or neutralized by a ballistic missile defense system on the one hand, and what is called as a second strike capability, which is a sea-based, mainly, the best reliable second strike capability can be a sea-based second strike capability, so with surface and particularly with submarines carrying nuclear warheads. So this is what the Indians would like to believe or would like to develop to be able to launch such a preemptive strike. The debate for us has been whether we need to match them in these capabilities. That is a quantitative response, or we need to make a qualitative response. And we have decided on pursuing a qualitative response, which means that we are developing the capabilities to actually penetrate the Indian ballistic missile defense system. No ballistic missile defense system is 100% secure, not even the American one. So our capabilities that we have developed involve land, sea and air launched cruise missiles, the Babar cruise missiles, and these are, as you know, terrain hugging, maneuverable missiles that can penetrate that can basically go under the range of the radar. So the radar has every BMD system has a accompanying radar system, and it can work up to a certain height, and below that height, it's blind. So the idea is that the cruise missiles will go in that blind zone to hit the BMD system. That's number one. Number two, we have developed what was tested a few months ago, which is a MIRVed, the Ghaznavi, which is a MIRVed or a multiple independently targetable re-entry vehicle, which is basically a missile which carries several warheads. And both the cruise and the Ababil, the Babar and the Ababil, are capable of carrying both conventional warheads and nuclear warheads. So they are in both roles. They can be employed in both roles. Third, India is a large country, and India's strategic targets are considerable. So even if we just focus on the military targeting, that would be sufficient to ensure deterrence or convince the Indians that they will have to suffer consequences that would be unacceptable to them. On the sea-based deterrent side, we do not have nuclear-powered submarines like India has, but we do have regular diesel-powered submarines which we have equipped with ballistic missiles. And also some of our surface ships are equipped with ballistic missiles, so we do have a capability that can counter the Indians at sea as well. And so we do have a second strike capability. If it was needed, we would be able to use our submarines and surface ships for that purpose. So this is basically how we are responding, and the Indians recognize this. My point is that we should never lower our guard or assume that we are safe, because it's a continuous race that we are involved in.
We can have two more questions.
Sir.
Please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is Sarfraz Kurejo from Shah Abdul Latif University, Khairpur. I'm a student of International Relations and a faculty member. So I have deepest appreciation for the author, Ambassador Zamir Akram Saab, for writing the exact response against the Western narrative, negative narrative, and even the Indian narrative. So the book is the need of our, and this needs to be intellectually debated, not only the big cities of Pakistan. I do offer and seek submission to the august floor, the might people. Madam Rector is sitting here, Dr. Huma, and the Rector and Chairperson, CEO of IoBM, and the great person, and I would say the son of the soil from Pakistan, who is always in search of finding the path. So I do offer the floor at Shah Abdul Latif University. The youth of Pakistan, our nation, they must be enlightened the precious prize what our elders, intellectuals, scientists, and even other those who are practically involved in having this comfort to our future generation. And very little, Excellency Sir, the author of book, you might have touched the secret meeting that was chaired in White House Multan by Zede Bhutto. Because our youth, they might, like me, don't know that White House in Multan. What was that White House? Actually, the residence of the then Chief Minister of Punjab, Mr. Sadiq Qureshi, his bungalow was painted white, so that's why it was called White House in Multan. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much, sir. My name is Zaim Hassan Mahmood. I am a research officer at CISSS. Sir, my question relates to the sea-based modernization of the nuclear component by India. And what is understood is a very different command, control, and communication system is being practiced at sea. And there are certain challenges and vulnerabilities that are at sea that are very different from the dynamics at land. So my question is, how do these developments affect the strategic security balance of South Asia, particularly from the perspective of Pakistan?
Yeah, that's, I mean, that's technically sound question, because, and unfortunately no one has an answer to that question, because definitely command and control over nuclear weapons, which in Pakistan's case is the authority of the National Command Authority. In India's case, it is of a similar institution. But to maintain command and control over sea-based facility, particularly submarine, nuclear-powered submarines that are at sea for long periods of time and are at very considerable distances away from headquarters, it is very likely that communications can break down, or communications can be misread or misinterpreted. If you remember, I mean, there was a movie, Hunt for Red October, if you remember, which was about a Soviet-era submarine that lost communication and could have launched a nuclear missile. So that problem is there. It's an operational problem. It has not been resolved, and it is something that we continue to take into account about ourselves, and also more about the Indians. I mean, whether there is enough command and control. And some of the behavior that we have seen from the Indians is not very encouraging. For instance, in 2021, there was the launch of a BrahMos missile, which the Indians claimed was an accident. But a missile is not like firing a gun, which is you just pull the trigger. It is, you have to go through almost 10-15 steps to actually launch a missile. And how that was done if it was an accident, it simply demonstrates the inefficiency, let's say, of the Indian command and control process.
Well, with that, we come to the conclusion of presentations and Q&A session. I want to thank all the speakers for taking time to be here and sharing their very insightful thoughts with us. I'm sure the researchers from CISSS and the students of IoBM must have learned a lot from the discussion and the presentations. And as you said, sir, we will continue our cooperation along these lines, and now we will be signing the MOU between IoBM and CISSS, your center. Then we will have group photograph and then presentation of souvenirs and then refreshments.
Director Global and Regional Studies Center of the IoBM, and Ambassador Qazi, Executive Director, Center for International Strategic Studies, Sindh, for the signing of Memorandum of Understanding between Center for International Strategic Studies, Sindh, and Global and Regional Studies Center of the IoBM.